Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Red Rising Book 2, Golden Sun, chapters 19 through 22, Stork, Helldiver, Stains, and Fire Blossom. In these chapters, well, Darrow did what I was hoping he would, even though I kind of was hoping he would also cut up. And then he manages to take an entire ship and all of its, legendary stained. Which, honestly, every time he does something wild like this, I'm surprised. And I don't know why. Haven't I learned that this is just how he is now? Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Ashley for commissioning this episode. Ashley, if you are out there, hi, and thank you so much. I want to thank everybody, actually, I may as well right now. The booking for this has been really consistent, so I am, one, glad of that because that means that I get to keep reading, but also just really appreciate, I know that it can be difficult to coordinate all of this stuff, and just really appreciate you guys taking the time to figure out all of the chapter breakdowns and everything. I have very slowly over the last few years begun to realize how best to organize stuff for Spoil Me, and it has taken me an extraordinarily long time to begin asking people to do chapter breakdowns themselves instead of having me do it, because I don't know when a good stopping point is, things like that. And you guys are just on top of that shit. So it's very, very nice to me. I get a little bit spoiled that I can sort of sit back and be like, I'll just read what they said in the booking, that's a new development. So I'm going to read quickly. Cassie left a really long comment before I started in response to my question in the last episode about if the Sovereign had been allowed to carry out what she had planned originally with letting the Bellonas kill all of the Augustus people, how exactly would it have gone? And Cassie has a pretty in-depth answer that I found interesting. Lo, Natasha, you asked how the Sovereign would have done her top-down coup last time. I don't recall hearing Pierce describe his version, but his love for classical culture is no secret, so here is my version. Karnas mentioned the sixth course was to die for. I don't remember that. What a little shit. I genuinely do not... I believe you, but oh my god, he couldn't help himself. The fucking shit. Okay. Mentioned the sixth course was to die for. The fifth course would include some form of stim-resistant sedative for the Augustan food. As the sixth course approaches, I would give yet another rousing discourse on the Compact, which would morph into a list of House Augustus transgressions against the gathered lords. By the time the lion is served, I, following in Roman tradition, would have proscribed Nero and his retinue as enemies of the society and of the Compact. And we know how them Olympic Knights feel about that. I have at least the Protean and... Protean, is that how you say that? And Mourning Knights, if not also the Rage Knight. But House Bellona would rise to the occasion and act for the good of the society. The aftermath would include new policies that grant some boon to the gathered to mollify them. That's how Roman emperors dealt with the armies and the Praetorian Guard, and involve some care for Virginia. So, one, thank you for reminding me of... Well, I say remind me of what Karnas says, but it only counts as a reminder if I remember at all, and I don't. But thank you for telling me about that. And I really like the idea of there being, drugged food. It hadn't even occurred to me that she would attempt to disable them in that sort of way. I kind of assumed that the being disabled was simply not having their personnel with them, having their ships taken. But why stop there? I think that makes a lot of sense. If anything, drug everyone. Like, make it so that they are sedated and everybody else is a little hyped up, so that when you begin your fucking speech about how they're enemies of the state and whatnot, everybody begins to get fucking pumped in a way that is unnatural and a little too violent. And then nothing feels weird when everybody descends and kills an entire family worth of people. Everybody is just so wrapped up in their emotional drug-induced rage. They don't stop and consider that maybe this feels a little bit like not how they normally would behave. So yeah, thank you for that, Cassie. I really liked that suggestion. So, okay, let's start with 19, the stork. And it's very funny because I believe it was Cassie last episode, when I was like, what does he mean about, like, bashing Quinn being related to use your piece wisely? And Cassie said, well, they're trying to keep him from doing anything rash. And then the next sentence, in the very first sentence in this chapter, they know I am rash. So yeah, he figures out, like, oh, they're trying to bait me, and I, like, need to at least collect Quinn. I can't fight Asia. I want to, but I have this, like, child that I've got to manage, so I can't do that. But at the very least, I'm going to pick Quinn up and bring her with me. Now, I'm going to be honest, kids. I thought Quinn was already dead here. You heard the way that I talked about her in the last chapters of just like, well, R.I.P. Quinn, because I fully thought she had been killed in this scene. She ends up dying later. I'm sorry if you hear that. It's my dog climbing up into a chair over here. But I didn't think that she was going to survive for as long as she did. I really thought this was a wrap on her already. And I didn't really, like, touch on this last time, but now that we've got, like, the full sort of, what's the word I want? Her death is sort of wrapped up in terms of we know for sure she's gone and the events have unfolded and sort of we've reached a bit of a lull in the action for now. I believe it will be very brief. I just wanted to address the fact that it keeps being women who are targeted in these books. And I don't mean that men aren't targeted at all, because obviously they're going after each other like crazy. It's that the real, like, moments of high drama and stakes seem to really be these levers that push our guy into a certain direction, and they are involving harm against women a lot. It starts with his wife, and then we have Mustang being abducted and him just losing his entire head and taking over Olympus. And Quinn is like a different situation in that he isn't personally in love with her, but it feels very much like, well, I made Quinn enough of a character and I made a number of people invested enough in her that losing her will hurt the reader and they will get it as like a huge tragedy, but I won't be actually sacrificing any characters that I can't afford to lose for the sake of the plot, because everybody else is too important. Everybody plays a very specific role in what's happening right now, and we can't lose, and I get that we can't lose them, but I also just like kind of want to point out the fact that we have very few women characters working alongside Darrow. We've pretty much just had Mustang and Quinn. Victra has been a recent addition. Don't know exactly what to make of her quite yet. And Victra doesn't feel key at the moment. I liked what I've seen of her, but she isn't like an insider who was at the Institute with Darrow. So it just kind of bums me out a little bit that this scene is yet another woman who is like being used as a taunt, really, is what it feels like. And I'm sure part of that is purposeful. Women are often used this way, because of all of the different delightful layers of misogyny and patriarchy and how those manifest. So to a degree, this is like just fucking true, but I notice it and I can't pretend that it doesn't sort of bug me. And I just wanted to address it. So this bit here, he is about to turn and get her, and somebody goes past him and grabs her up, and it's the Jackal, who actually seems to be a lot more invested in keeping her alive than I was expecting. I thought, because he can be such a sociopath, maybe even psychopath, that he would like just kind of have to make himself care, pretend to care. And Darrow is pretty good at picking up on when the Jackal's pretending to give a shit. And it doesn't feel like he ever suspects that's what's happening here. The Jackal is really trying to save her. And later on, when she's gone, he's like, I tried my best. And Darrow is like, I know you did. And he says it very sincerely. So I was kind of gratified by that, because just knowing that occasionally, even if it's just because she's a piece, she's a pawn that they need and he doesn't want her sacrificed yet, maybe that's the only level on which he actually cares. But even so, he cares in some way, and I'll take it, because I, at times, don't really know what he cares about, truly, when it comes down to it. Cassie says, totally valid. If it helps, a number of the Howlers are also female, but you can't quite tell by their names. Well, and that's kind of what I mean, is like, they are, but they're not important. I don't feel like if any of them died, I wouldn't really feel it the same way. Quinn is the only one that I've really known in any one-on-one interactions that have been from the start. And the others, like, I think, is Clown a woman? I can't remember. I think that's a guy, actually. But yeah, they're just so sort of background. And I just want it to feel like it's more than just sort of Mustang as the one, like, standout, it's tough. This is always a thing as a woman that it can be really difficult to sort of get past, because what happens is that if you don't have a good number of like recurring female characters who feel like really involved, the few that are out there, you begin to hang all of your expectations or your criticisms on in a way that isn't exactly fair to those characters. But if you don't have that many to focus on, well, then what else are you going to... It's like the same phenomenon that happens with like a female-led or female-directed superhero movie coming out. And if it doesn't do well, if it's not an outstanding success and critically lauded, everybody's like, well, see, women can't direct. And it's like, well, if we were given the same number of chances as dudes fucking flop all the time. Their movies suck constantly, and nobody has decided that means dudes can't direct. But we are given so few chances that there's so much expectation surrounding them that it's practically impossible to live up to. You've got to be like perfect in order to be taken seriously. And so that's what can happen when there are only a couple of like female characters that are really named and constantly in the conversation. You start to like assign meaning to what happens to them in a way that maybe the author didn't intend, or maybe isn't actually that significant. But because you've got so little to focus on, it's hard not to let yourself, mentally go in that direction of thinking. But anyway, okay, so at this point, they're looking for yellows, who are the ones who do like medical care. There aren't any on board. And there is just like a kind of feeling of paralysis at first when they realize how bad she is. And eventually the jackal is like, I'm going to do what I can, but we need to get her to like a med bay. She'd be able to be saved for sure, but we're far enough away. I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. And he asks the jackal to come and talk to her, tell her a story, like basically keep her somehow linked to life. And this is the sort of thing that I think is a fascinating idea. And I am sure that there are people out there who have either been at deathbeds or who work in like the medical industry and have seen death a number of times, that they can say this actually happens. But the idea of like being a voice that serves as an anchor to life so that a person doesn't feel like, well, I'll just slip away. I'll just go because that's easier. If they feel the tug of the presence of somebody that they care about holding them there, it's more likely that they're going to fight to stay. And you see this in all kinds of different fiction. And I have never been at a death. I've never seen somebody die. I have been at deathbeds where the person passed away shortly after, but I have never actually seen this sort of thing. And the deathbeds, it was very much like there was not a point in attempting to keep them. They were going, So this is like this bit here. He tells her the story of the pigeons that, are in love and fly away from each other and find each other again. And it's a really, like, when Darrow realizes the story is about them, and he remembers how Quinn had been at one point with Cassius. I love the way he says, like, as every woman apparently has to be at some point. But he's like, even when she was with Cassius, I remember her and Roke, like, looking at each other. There was definitely something between them that was always there. And it just seems like it's sort of unrequited. But also what we've got is Severo coping with this. And Severo, we already were aware that he had developed feelings for her and was feeling pretty jealous of Roke. But Severo, I'm trying to think of exactly how to describe him, because he's an agent of chaos, which we've already established. He is very much a, fuck the system, because what have they ever done for me? His father, he's just sort of like, fuck that guy, because now he's become part of an overall system that he thinks is bullshit. And a lot of this is a way of coping with his own treatment, in that he is smaller than average and has been, like, mocked for that a lot. And dismissed as not worthwhile, put in the passage as the one that was supposed to die. And everybody, like, expected that. And then he lived, and it was held against him in a way that fucking doesn't make sense. It's supposed to be survival of the fittest, and he was the fittest, and you guys say you live by that, and apparently you don't fucking do that if you're pissed. But I digress. So the thing with him is that he has very much got a chip on his shoulder, and what he enjoys so much about Darrow is that he can tell Darrow does too. He isn't entirely, I don't think, aware of where that's coming from, although he does have some knowledge, I think, that Darrow might not be everything he looks like. And the fact that he is able to align with somebody who is willing to spit in the face of authority, and this person is genuinely capable and, like, managing to do shit that's unheard of, it's just a perfect alignment for him. So it works out beautifully. But at the heart of him is hurt. And everything that he does is to sort of distract himself from that. So Quinn's death is a hurt that is so unexpected and immediate that he isn't ready to cope with it in a way that keeps it invisible to the people around him. His attitude, usually, he is able to convince everybody around him how tough, how sneaky, how not to be fucked with he is. And then Quinn's injury and subsequent death, it's like he is stripped of every piece of armor that he is usually able to employ to keep his emotions hidden. And it's so relatable to me. I am somebody who, am able to keep my emotions, despite the fact that I can cry at the drop of a hat, especially on this show. I have for a long time been very divorced from my emotions and have been in the past several years really making an effort to try and connect with them again and not feel as afraid of them as I have been. I think that my divorce and how much that hurt and the trauma of that caused me to shut down a little bit because I was just struggling so badly. And I thought mistakenly that maybe if I distance myself from my emotions, that pain would cease to have an effect, that I wouldn't maybe suffer from depression. Spoilers, that's not how that works at all. And so similar to grief, there would be times where something would hit me out of nowhere very unexpectedly, and I would lose it in a place that it was inappropriate to suddenly have that kind of reaction. But it was I was able to prep myself for the pain of being in a place that reminded me of somebody, or, watching a movie that had to do with certain subject matter. And then something would sneak up that I hadn't prepped for and sock me in the gut. And it was I'd shatter. I was so fragile that any poke that came from a place that I couldn't predict and ready myself for knocked me flat. And that's kind of, what it feels like is going on with Severo. He is just wrecked in a way that he doesn't know what to do with, this feeling is so overwhelming. He fucking flees at the end of this last chapter because he can't keep himself from beginning to burst into tears, and he doesn't want anybody to see him like that. And there's people who aren't aware of his feelings for Quinn as well, and I don't think he wants them to know for whatever reason, just because he's kind of a control freak, I get the sense, about himself. And I just really sympathize with the difficulty he has in knowing how to cope. Roke obviously feels the loss of Quinn profoundly, but he is extremely present with her in a way that Severo can't be, because they didn't have anything between them, and he doesn't want to make himself vulnerable the way that Roke is willing to do. And I think in some ways, probably Severo is jealous of Roke about more than just Quinn, about the fact that Severo has been able to leave himself exposed and vulnerable, and he doesn't feel safe doing that, which it makes sense he doesn't feel safe doing that. He is not in the type of privileged position Roke is in. And if he displayed the same kind of penchant for philosophy and poetry, in addition to being this smaller guy, I feel like people would have a very different reaction. Roke, it's sort of yeah, he's soft, but we'll indulge him. And with Severo, it would definitely be seen as a huge weakness on top of a weakness. So anyway, I just really felt for Severo in this. And I'm also extremely curious because it's clear by the end of these chapters that Roke blames Darrow for Quinn's death, which it's the sort of thing where you're not wrong, but also Quinn was a grown woman who made a choice to do a thing and nobody made her. So I get blaming Darrow, it was all like his plot and plan. Also, though, Darrow didn't call the Howlers in. Morgan called them, or Mustang called them in. And I sort of want a little bit of his like feelings on this to go toward Mustang for just bringing them in for duty as well. But we get a mention here about Roque still like not knowing why Darrow attacked him and injected him before the gala. And I was sort of surprised because to me, Darrow's unexpectedly in a great position where he has told Severo that he found out about the Sovereign's plan to take down the Augustus family before instigating the duel, which is not true, as we know. But he tells Severo as if to sort of suggest that's why I was willing to risk the thing with the duel, because I knew what was at stake. Not really, but, you know, I think a part of him did suspect, though. Things felt unsettled and weird, like he knew something was up, even if he wasn't aware what was really happening. So this feels to me like a perfect opportunity to be like, I knew what she was planning and I was going to take a risk in what I did. And I didn't want you to be caught up in the middle of it if I could prevent it. The rest of the family, they were going to be there, you know, like, and he's not an Augustus. So Roque wouldn't be like a target, but he would have been very much in the thick of things. And maybe he could try and pretend it's like me protecting you, bud. You're my best friend. I knew shit was really going to go down, as it did. Like, even more than Darrow expected, the way that the violence spread to everybody getting even with people who had wronged them from fucking who knows how long ago. That really did become a whole situation. So I think Darrow could conceivably make the case for that. And I was sort of expecting him to, and he doesn't. And I was genuinely a little bit surprised. But they haven't had a lot of time to talk, you know? So, and explaining himself while Roque is walking in carrying his dead lover, it's not the time to have the fucking conversation. So I get that he didn't, you know? I'm just sort of wondering if maybe that's the direction he will go with. Sorry. Oh, Alex is here. Hi, Alex. I always hate when characters blame others for someone else's actions because I always feel it takes away the agency of the person. Like they wouldn't have been in the situation they were in if it weren't for Darrow's actions. However, like you said, Quinn was a grown-ass woman who made her choice to be there. She knew the risks. She knew what she would be getting into. And blaming someone else for their actions always feels, I always felt takes away from that person and their agency. Definitely agree. And honestly, this is sort of part of what I mean about it being a woman. It feels like if this had been a guy who died, Darrow being blamed in this way wouldn't happen. Not just because there's maybe not some, like, for example, let's say it's Roque that died. Do you think Quinn holds Darrow accountable if, like, Roque died? I don't see that happening. I feel like women are infantilized a little bit and their agency is routinely taken away. And even though Quinn is a fucking warrior, that is what's happening here a little bit. And I'm willing to just go with immediate grief. Roque isn't being exactly fair. She just died in front of him. It was a really horrible injury that was like, maybe we could have saved her if things had gone differently. But also, like, Darrow saved your lives. The whole family. He jumped in and saved you. And so being like, look, Darrow, look at your friend. What do you think that he, like, for real? It just felt so one-sided. And considering that Roque's whole thing is like philosophy, it does seem like maybe he should be able to see that that is an unfair accusation. But again, he is coming off of having been like unexpectedly attacked and drugged by his friend and not knowing why. So there's just a certain amount of ill feeling there already and like an uncertainty and doubt already that I'm sure is really what's feeding into this the most. But yeah, so anyway, the whole thing with Quinn and Roque and Severo, it's just really fascinating to me in some ways to see the difference in how they respond to things. And I don't really get the sense that Severo will blame Darrow at all. I feel like, if anything, this is going to make him turn on the Sovereign in a way that's similar to how Darrow's been feeling with his wife. And again, is it just, we're killing this girl to change the narrative for like some male characters? Is that what we're doing? Wait and see, I guess. I can't make that judgment call yet, so who knows? And there's a point at which Victra tries to sort of comfort Severo, and he shoves her hand off and says, "I don't know you." And like, again, with feeling very much like I relate to Severo, especially as somebody who also tends to make a joke out of things all the time. I don't want comfort from strangers. I don't value that. You don't know me. You don't know any of the circumstances surrounding what's going on or me personally. It's really none of your business, and I know that you mean well, but now is not the fucking time. There's almost a sense sometimes to me when people attempt that of it being selfish. Like they are wanting to make themselves feel like a good person. And so they're inserting themselves in a situation they were not asked to be in. And I very much get this way, like, people talk about like reaching out when you're having a depressive episode, when you're going through it. And I have never been the person to reach out, quote unquote, because I get these sorts of like responses from people I don't know well, DMing me and just being like, "Hey, just wanted to let you know I'm here for you." And I'm like, I don't know you. I don't want this from you. I get it. You mean well. But I have a difficult enough time making myself vulnerable, and I'm sure not fucking doing it with strangers. It's not happening. When I'm going through a depressive episode, I barely even let Rashawn know that it's happening. Because honestly, in my opinion, there's very little anybody can do to help. I have to just get through it. And I know that. And people reaching out almost just feels like additional labor that I have got to manage in order to keep them from feeling offended. And I don't want to worry about your feelings when I can barely handle mine. So, and I get this with Rashawn too. She doesn't tell me sometimes when she's going through it because she knows that I'll worry and be like, "Are you okay? Like, is there anything I can do?" And she's just going to have to then fucking respond and worry about what I feel and whether I'm, whether she's made me worry for nothing kind of thing. She and I really understand one another's instincts, and that's why we leave each other alone and we isolate ourselves a little bit, because truly, I get Victra here. She, I think, is a good person, and she sees he's in pain and she's just like, "Oh God, hun." But yeah, you don't fucking know him. You don't know even why he's upset exactly. Like, just, nah, girl, just don't. Alex says, "I was literally typing what you were saying. Haha. This is why the Scream Into the Void channel in the Discord is great. Hashtag plugging the Discord. Hashtag join the Discord." Yeah, guys, join the Discord. But there's a Scream Into the Void channel where people just go and shout about shit that's going wrong or that they're pissed about, but they don't really necessarily want advice on. Sometimes they'll ask for advice or there'll be like conversations back and forth, but sometimes it's just, I fucking hate being poor and I'm sick of it. There's nothing anybody can say and do about that unless they want to just send you money, but you can go somewhere and just fucking say it and not feel like you're demanding people's time and energy or having to like, entertain their questions. So I am fucking 35 minutes in, and you guys, I haven't barely gotten to anything. All right, let's talk about Tactus, you guys. So last episode, you may remember that I said Tactus was starting to kind of grow on me. And you might think that after what happens in these chapters, I would be like, my bad. Au contraire. In fact, this is exactly why he's been growing on me. Because he does this shit. I knew. Tell me that you didn't know, guys, right? Tactus volunteers to take this kid off to, like, I don't even remember where he's bringing him, but somewhere safe. And it was sort of in response to the fact that Augustus asked Victra to take the kid in what is interestingly acknowledged by Darrow as a sexist move. There's one other woman other than Mustang, and he's like, go deal with the child, which is just fucking typical. So Tactus is like, I'll take him. And immediately I was like, anybody? Like, that really doesn't seem surprising. I don't like this. But when I stopped to sort of consider what it was that he could even do, I couldn't think I was like, would he just kill the boy? Like, killing him to screw Darrow over? I don't really know. And it's also this volunteering of to take, what is the kid's name? I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the spot here. Lysander. He volunteers after this sort of passive aggressive moment where he comes up and says something about how all these people willing to die for you, Darrow. It's just how you like it. Here it is. I'm going to just mention this here. Just how you like 'em, eh, Darrow? Friends who will risk life and limb to always be in your shadow. He nudges me a bit too playfully, leaving faint smears of his blood on me. A bit too playfully. And like, we all have been here. Somebody's joking and they can say they're joking and you know they're not fucking joking, but they just don't have the courage to just say the thing. And instead, they're just doing this shit. And it's just like, can we just fucking talk this out? Or are you continuing to hide behind humor here? Is that how we're going to play this? Great. So, you know, the fact that he's already got this energy and then he volunteers to take the kid, I'm just primed to be like, oh, what's he doing? And yeah, like I said, the only thing I could think was like, is he going to kill him? It never even occurred to me to completely turn a corner and take the kid. Maybe, I'm assuming that what his plan was to take the kid back to the Sovereign and be like, hey, I got your son back. Please give me favors and, you know, protection, stature, whatever. I don't know why it didn't occur to me. I think it's because killing the kid would have felt more like he's taking revenge in a petulant way that was full of an anger that I could sort of understand, even if I would not respect it. But taking the kid to give him back is a kind of betrayal that's so much more fundamental that after everything that he owes to Darrow, it's really just like, wow, you ungrateful shit. And so it didn't even occur to me because it's such a terrible choice. And I sort of love the fact that he's just like, oh yeah, Darrow saved my life. And also, fuck that guy, I'm going to do what I need to do. And I can't help but kind of like this energy because it's, in its way, extremely predictable. And if you are willing to see a person for what they are, you won't be surprised that they do this shit. And that's what Darrow says to himself later is like, I should have fucking known. Because this is just how he rolls. He always does what he needs for himself. And when the chips are down, he just isn't there for me. Like, it's just the way he has always been. And somehow I thought I could change him. And what a fucking asshole I am. But I'm going to say this on the record, and I may be wrong. And if I am, fine. I think maybe he will change him a little bit. I think maybe he will. I think Tactus is going to be a real Loki type, where, like, he's a friend for, like, 2 seconds, and you like having him on your side in your way, but he's by no means somebody that you want to rely on, and will definitely take whatever deal he's given. If it's between that and his life, he does not have honor. But he'll keep shit interesting. That he will. He will really keep you on your toes, and he will keep the story doing wild stuff. And he's a chaos gremlin of a totally different type, where it's not the chaos, like, it's a different type of chaos, because what he does is actually very ordered. It's always about his own benefit. But the things that he does for his own benefit create chaos in their wake, more than that he is attempting to create chaos the way that it feels Severo is a lot of the time. So anyway, like I said, Tactus, a real shit, been feeling like, Darrow, why do you trust this guy? And yet, I'm starting to be kind of like, all right, this is a character I'm very interested in. And I also really want to know what the deal is with his brothers, because, like, we've heard some vague things. I feel like there's a lot more going on that probably would be truly awful to find out about. Also, just for the record, Lysander is a real G. He's just talking to Augustus about, like, his whole, the fact that he is above average in every sense, that he learns from his mistakes, and is worried, like, in a way, about Augustus maybe being ready to kill him, but not seeming scared. I mean, he's scared, but it's like, again, the same way that he was when he was talking to Aja. This is how the game is played. You don't interfere with this, and don't act shocked, because we all know what the fucking score is. And so there's very much a sort of matter-of-fact, are you going to kill me? Because I know that's an option, and I know it's something that some people would do, and if you felt it was beneficial, I'm just curious if you feel it's beneficial. Just wanting to know where I stand in all of this, you know? There's a moment here as well where fucking Pliny, who barely speaks, except to be like, do you think we could make amends? And Mustang's like, are you fucking high? And he's just like, look, I am just saying, she's the sovereign. I genuinely want to know what you think you can do. Which way do you think this is going to go? You set yourself against her, and I am sorry, I do not see it for you. And I am attached to your house. So be assured, I give a shit what happens to you. Because whatever happens to you also happens to me. I have a vested self-interest. I am not leading you astray because I'm trying to trick you. That isn't how that would work out for me. So, truly, if you think anything of my intelligence and the, like, service I've given you over the years, you want to undo this. And Augustus is like, dude, I have tried to, work with her, and have put my pride in my pocket a few times. And she has pushed and pushed and pushed, and now she is trying to fucking kill me in my sleep. No, I am not willing to work with that. And Pliny just sort of never speaks up again. Like, we don't hear from him again. This is when they find out that the cargo bay is opening, and it takes a moment for them to understand what even is happening. And it's Mustang and Darrow who are the first to get it. And of course they go back there, and he's fucking gone already. And, there's nothing to be done. Like, the only chip that they had has been taken away. And as soon as the Sovereign realizes that her son isn't on board their ship, they're going to be fucked. So we have some moments of everybody sort of looking at one another like, what do we do? And there's a moment here, I like this. After a moment, Augustus sets a bony hand on Mustang's shoulder. She flinches, surprised. Whether missile or boarding craft come, die like golds, Augustus says solemnly to us. not because he wishes us to think him strong in his last moments, but because he believes in what he is, a superior being, a master of his human frailties. For him, death is merely the ultimate frailty. Humans whimper when they die. They claw for life, even if there is no hope. He will not. Death is not grander than his pride. And I really like that there's a moment here of Darrow being like, that's a real red thing, too, actually, now that I stop and think about it. Just sort of accepting things. But then he's like, yeah, but we believe in, like, an afterlife. And they don't believe in that. So we have a sort of comfort they can't have. And I thought it was really interesting the way that he describes this as a given. Like, I believe that Darrow believes in the afterlife. And he mentions at one point later on that they gave these certain obsidians the, what's the word? The religion of the Norse. And I sort of have wanted him to sort of like question what he's been taught in terms of religion, and the fact that something that he fundamentally believes was likely part of a playbook that was fed to his people on purpose in a way, and whether that shakes his faith at all. But we haven't really heard that much from him about that. So at this point, we've got a plan. Darrow literally says, never tell me the odds. And I was like, you couldn't help yourself, could you, Pierce? Okay, I see you. But what he's intending to do is just fucking send the ship into another ship. And he's like, they stopped me from doing this that one time, but I'm going to fucking do it now. And once Augustus realizes what he's going to do, he's very approving. Just very much like, yeah, we're going to go out like fucking badasses. Let's do it. And I love the way that this is. Mustang is just like, okay, we're going, priming launch. And I love this part. Aim true, I say, always. Darrow, her silence says 1,000 things. I'm sorry, I tell her. Good luck. This is not fun, Severo groans. So they're in these suits. And, you know, they're in fucking space. So, like, the suits protect them to a point, but it is very traumatic to the body in a way that if Darrow weren't built different, very literally, it could have some unfortunate effects, like him shitting himself, that he is able to escape, but he's not sure if Severo was able to escape by the time they get there. And let's see. I'm trying to find the spot here. The metal teeth jerk me forward into the tube's magnetic stream, and it happens. Even through my suit, G-forces hit me like the backhand of the obsidian's thunder god. My vision flickers black. Stomach rises into throat, lungs constrict, blood slows in my veins. I snap forward. Lights flicker in my eyes. I don't see the walls of the tube I'm shot through. I don't even see the ship that brought me here. I see Eo's face in the darkness. I black out. Bodies can't take this. Too fast. Darkness. Then the darkness has holes. Stars. There's no meantime. 1 second I'm on the ship, the next I'm ripping through the deep of space at 10 times the speed of sound. Many shit their suits at this point. It's not a fear thing, it's biology and physics. The human body can only take so much. Mickey the Carver made sure mine could take just a little bit more. I hope Severo's can too. So, they're trying to shoot at them, but they're going too goddamn fast. They're not getting them. And they're just beginning to realize what these two are up to. And the bridge is close. I spare a look up, see golds inside roaring at one another. Blues scatter, obsidians pull their weapons, 2 golds don breath masks and unfurl razors, ready for the kill. The second before we hit, I shoot my pulse cannon. It thumps on the thick glass. I shoot again and again and again. Then I curl into a ball and smash into the thick bridge glass with the full velocity of my launch, as well as a last-second burst from my thruster boots. Out of me roars a madman's scream. That is really cinematic. My goodness. Would love to see this. I imagine it all being done the way in the second, what was the, I think it's Last Jedi. Remember the speed of sound, what is it called when they go to warp speed? And the ship like cuts through another ship and the whole thing goes silent for a moment. I imagine this being done in like total silence, and he's screaming, but like it's extremely faint and muffled to you as the viewer, and he crashes through the glass, and that's when the sound all comes back. Like when he's in space, there's just nothing because there's no, you know, I feel like I see this in my head. So I love Severo. He groans something about his ass. Maybe he did shit himself. So all of these people get sucked out into space. It really doesn't suck them out through the shattered windows so much as the internal pressure of the ship pushes them out. And it's pretty ugly. You know, he's like watching them die later on and is realizing how many of the blues that are still alive are seeing like friends die these terrible deaths, and it's just like, oh God. He throws up and realizes that he has a concussion. Something happened to his arm. Like he also, even though he's got this suit on, the pressure is pulling him towards the opening as well. And he has to keep himself from going out. And, finally emergency locks go in and the pressure returns to normal. The ship's officers and crew pick themselves up from the ground, gasping for breath, but there is none. Oxygen and pressure are still being pumped back into the room, so those with breathing masks watch placidly as the few pink valets and orange technicians flop like fish, gasping for air that is not there. That is truly awful. The fact that you're surrounded by people who have means to breathe and to help you, and they're not, and it's like, likely if they did, it would kill them. So I'm not even like that mad about it because, you know, I don't know that for sure. I suppose I might be making that up. But this is just a really awful moment. So finally, we have this amazing moment where what Darrow decides to do, at first, it takes a bit for him to get people to fucking listen to him. And there's some dude who has a cut on his face, a blue, who's like very fragile about it. And Severo literally picks the guy up and like brings him over to use his badge and like get things going again on the bridge. But he makes a speech to everyone. And he names the ship Pax and is like, all right, guys, so real talk. I don't know if you're aware of this, but as Golds, we are taught to conquer. And one of the things about taking a ship that we are taught to immediately do is vent the ship right away. Because the people that are on board are all going to be folks who are loyal to the opposite side. And this is just procedure. And as he's saying this, Severo is bringing up the console that allows this to happen. And he can access it because he's a Gold. But the Blues didn't even know this function was there. So it's just a real like moment of, oh my God. Like it's in their midst. And they just had no idea. And Darrow is saying, I don't want to kill all of you. I know that you don't want to die. So here's what we've got to do. Lots of Golds are still on this ship, and they're trying to take it back. If they win, they're probably going to vent the place to get rid of us. And they're loyal to the Sovereign. They'll sabotage the ship in order to win if they have to. And they'll lead you into death. And it's all because they hate me and they are loyal to the Sovereign. Is that something that you really want to die for? Or do you want to just kill the Golds for me and I'll keep you alive and promise not to vent the ship because I don't even want to have to do that? And again, he's also like, if they win too, the sovereign is gonna like, or not if they win, let's see. The sovereign wonders what happened here. Soon she will realize the pride of her armada no longer belongs to her. Her praetor's ships will vomit out squadrons of leechcraft carrying legions of obsidians and gray marines. They will be led by gold knights who want my head, fully prepared to kill all in their path. If I vent you into space, there will be no one to stop them from killing me. So you are my salvation and I am yours. And he gives permission. Take him down. I've opened all of the armories. Get your weapons and deal with the tyrants. And I really love this moment because Severo is like, well. And he's like, was that too democratic? And Severo's like, is it democratic to be like, I'll kill you if you don't? I think you're fine. I was like, that's good point. So then they are stopped by this voice. And I'm going to get right up on the mic to imitate this. Can you hear me? Are you a god? You took the vessel, and you are not yet praetor. How? I will come and meet you and your companion, godchild. And I love this. At first, Darrow's like, what voice amplifier is this guy using? This is weird. And then as this person keeps talking, he's like, oh my God, he's not using a voice amplifier. That's just what he fucking sounds like. What is this guy made of? And they're waiting, and this dude comes through absolutely mowing down everybody who tries to stop him. This guy is enormous. It's not just his size, it's how he moves. A dread creature stitched from shadow and muscle and armor. Flowing, not running. Perverse, like looking at a blade or a weapon made of flesh. This is a creature that dogs would flee, that cats would hiss at. One that should never exist on any level above the first tier of hell. He smashes into the kill squad from behind with two pulsing white ion blades that extend out of his armor 3 feet from his hands. The Greys he simply runs through, crushing them into the walls with his shoulders, splintering their bones. Then he starts the real killing. It's so savage I have to look away. And it's interesting that he says that because just earlier, Darrow was thinking about how he's like able to kill people on the bridge without really feeling anything, and how it's sort of worrisome to him that it's different enough, like the Institute and the Passage, that was like, you are naked, killing somebody you have gotten to know with your bare hands. And after that, everything in war feels so deeply impersonal that there's just very little emotion attached to it, and how sort of frightening that is. So this dude kills everybody. And then he comes up. This is the way that he deals with everybody. There's a woman who's like got him like partially impaled, and he's just like shrugging it off. And he says, I am Ragnar Volaris, the stained firstborn of my mother, alias Snow Sparrow of the Valkyrie Spires, north of Dragonspine, south of the fallen city, where the winged horror flies, brother of Sephi the Quiet, breaker of Tanos, which once stood by the water, and I make you an offering of stains. I'm pissing my bloody damn suit. I just love this so much. And Severo says, do it before it changes its mind. I don't love that they're calling him it, although I understand, you know who I keep picturing here is the guy with the Kiwi accent made of rocks in the Marvel movies. I can't remember the character's name. But he is, just so enormous, but also like weirdly gentle. So I don't think it really counts the comparison, but that's just sort of what I'm imagining. And when he says like, do you have a master? Dude's like, I mean, you because I belong to the ship and you took the ship. And Darrow's like, wow, did he just find a loophole? Is he doing this? And it's very much like, yeah, this guy is extremely unimpressed with the Julii and says that they trade us and doesn't know how to hide his hatred, as Darrow puts it. Will you accept these stains, godchild? He asks, leaning forward, voice plaintive, a strange worry creasing the corners of his mouth. Golds did this after the Dark Revolt, the only uprising to ever threaten their reign. We took their history, took their technology, wiped out a generation, and gave their race the poles of planets, the religion of the Norse, and told them we were their gods. And this just really reminded me of the way that colonization works in general. And I know that there are a lot of Black folks who have an issue with how many Christians are in the Black community. Because they're they taught us their oppressive religion and we bought into it, and this is bullshit, And I can definitely see where they're coming from on that. And it's interesting, again, with this being mentioned here, that Darrow hasn't sort of stopped to question his own thoughts about the afterlife and whatnot. But he accepts. And Ragnar says, I will serve on the honor of my mother and her mother before her. And I do love that it's mother's. It's not his father. And he says, I have friends aboard the Stork in Hangar Bay 3. Save them and I will owe you a debt. Yellow teeth are revealed as he smiles, and from him undulates a war chant deeper than the ocean at storm. I love that. It's almost like it's not even coming from his throat. The way that he says it undulates from him, it's like his entire person is making a sound. It makes me think of cats purring, that kind of thing. So I'm almost out of time, but we'll talk about 22. The Blues all jockeying for position to take over the ship and be the one in charge on the bridge. And I love this. There's one Blue who is just very sarcastic and has actual personality in a way none of the others have. And it is considered very much a flaw. The other Blues are you see the way she's acting? This is exactly why you shouldn't hire her. This is bullshit. She's fucking insubordinate, basically. She calls him boy. And when he asks about that, she's like, you're half my age. Should I call you Lord Boy? Or are you going to get all fucking pissy about that? And her name is Orion. She has no sect. She was appropriated by the Copernican sect, but dismissed shortly thereafter for obvious reasons. She's a docker. I do not know what that means, but she doesn't like it. And at first, she's like, well, she says, you are a pedantic little gasp of a fart. And he's like, you see what I'm saying? Right there. She's the product of her greasy environment. Greasy's italicized. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then she's like, you know what? Fuck you. And she punches him. And immediately Severo's like, this one. Yes. And of course, I'm thinking, clearly it's going to be her. And Darrow has a bunch of other Blues come forward and talk about their qualifications. But he's like, they're all kneeling to me and not noticing that I am not even looking at them. The one that's not kneeling is the one that has my attention. I really want to know why she has so much personality. Where is this coming from? She clearly grew up in a way that is not typical. What is the deal? And it's just, of course, it just gets to him. Anybody who's sort of an outlier, immediately Darrow's always like, what's their deal? What's up? So, yeah, he gives it to her. I love when he's like, what about all that noise? I ask Orion, gesturing to the Blues. They're full of batshit, Dominus. I am not full of batshit. And you're running out of time. I know I can do this, otherwise I would not have spoken out. Give me a chance. Rules of engagement? Minimal casualties, I say. We are good. The sovereign is the tyrant. That is how this must play. And she's like, got it. And this is really interesting because, like, the ship they've taken is top tier, absolute pinnacle of engineering. So anybody coming at them is going to have a real job of it. And the fact that he has managed to keep the whole crew and everything, I mean, that is key. So this is when he gets on the comm again and is just like, your sovereign broke the compact, tried to assassinate us, and we're coming at her with what we've got. And, you know, just laying it out there. But interestingly, he does not think about the recording device, which later on the Jackal asks about. So, I love this. Beyond my vessel, the enemy ships finally show their menace. The scanners swell with red. Enemies, leechcraft freshly spilt from the bellies of the armada around us, streak through space to find our hull. They aim to take us by storm. Orion opens broadsides. It's so beautiful, Severo murmurs. I stand in silence. Railgun payloads slam through leechcraft, shearing away metal and men, only to carry on and smash into the hulls and shields of the same men of war that launched the leechcraft. And he's just watching this like, oh, well. And Severo is like, I can't believe that we may actually fucking survive this. God damn. And he leaves Orion to the bridge and takes off to meet everybody who's like finally coming to meet him from the Stork. This is when we find out that Quinn has died. And Severo takes off, basically. And this is also when the Jackal is like, so where's your like helmet cam? And we find out, he says, I almost forgot the data recorder the Sons of Ares put in my tooth to record the bomb blast. It's activated with a clench of my molars. I clenched them as soon as I sat down in the Sovereign's office. Did we know about that? Or is that a total surprise? I feel like we didn't know at all about that, right? And it's like, he says it's smaller than a hair. And it was like in his gums. You guys, I don't care how small it is. In your gums? That sounds so awful. Oh my God. Like, I've had pieces of food just stuck between my teeth before, and it's been agony. And I just can't imagine. Oh my God, that sounds so awful. And he says it's from the black market, and I'm very worried that he hands this over and the Jackal's going to be able to find out where it's from and figure out part of, like, the deal with Darrow. And I don't know if it's even possible, but I am concerned about it. That's all I'm saying. So this is when Mustang comes up to him and says, I know you're tired, but Severo needs you. She's got her arms around him, but he had noticed earlier that she was no longer wearing the ring. So he's getting a lot of like mixed signals here. And her arms around him, it feels more like after what he just pulled, he's managed to sort of win her over again. But I am unsure how like permanent this is, or if it's just a reaction to grief, you know? And when he says, what about Roke? She says, not now. And he says, Roke blames me, and he should. They should all blame me, and it's only going to get worse. And that is the end of chapter 22. So, I gotta wrap up, but thank you guys very much for hanging out with me, and really, really enjoying reading this. It's been so much fun. I'm definitely going to be reading the next chapters immediately. I hope you're enjoying the coverage, and until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.